Greetings. My name is Brother Scott, and I believe that with faith, courage, and discipline, we will prevail. Okay, so for today's video, we're going to continue with our pursuing our calling and building our dynasty. You understand? So in the first couple videos, I taught you guys how to pursue your calling. And remember, we as men, our purpose in life is to pursue our calling and build our dynasty. So now today we're going to start off on that second part of our purpose. Our purpose in life is to pursue our calling, build our dynasty, and today we're going to talk about creating a plan to build a dynasty. All right? So, first question, what is a dynasty? A dynasty is a family with businesses, assets, and knowledge that can be passed down from generation to generation. Okay? A family with businesses, assets, and knowledge. And I said, and technically speaking, a business is an asset, but I separate the two because of the complexity of a business. You understand? But same thing. Got it? All right. So I said businesses, assets, and knowledge that can be passed down from generation to generation. And you're probably asking, okay, how does knowledge play into a dynasty? What exactly do you mean by knowledge? I get the business part, passing down wealth. I get the asset part, but what's the knowledge? Okay, so the way to look at it is we'll use an example. Actually, we'll use an example. All right, let's go back to ancient Greece. Okay, all right. So we're gonna go back to the days of the great philosophers. Okay, so Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, those guys, right? And so Socrates is known, at least in the Western world, as the first true philosopher, all right? And what ended up happening is Socrates, as he was teaching in Athens, and he was gaining followers, what ended up happening is some of his followers, some of his students would take his knowledge, would take his approach to answering the questions of life. And they would take it and mold it and make it their own. And so that knowledge, Socrates passed down to Plato, which is one of his students, and many other students as well, but the most well-known student is Plato. So you go from Socrates to Plato, and then Plato, even though they're not blood related, right? They're not kin or anything like that. Plato did the same thing for Aristotle. Now, Plato and Aristotle, they had a very different idea of the meaning of life and how to interpret politics and kings and nobility and our places in society. Even though Plato and Aristotle had different points of views, Aristotle still came from that branch of Plato, and along with all the other followers of Plato, so on and so forth. And then to cap that part off, Aristotle was actually the tutor of Alexander the great conqueror, right? So this line, right, this is a intellectual dynasty that was passed down from Socrates to Plato to Aristotle to Alexander the Great. All right, so that's what I mean by knowledge. When I say a dynasty is a family with businesses, assets, and knowledge that can be passed down from generation to generation. You got it? Now, when it comes to a dynasty, expanding your estate, having financial freedom, and creating generational wealth should be your primary objective when building your dynasty. You understand? Now, this next portion, this next section, we're going to talk about the importance of having your own businesses. All right. All right. And by the way, we're going to talk about business and assets and things like that. We're just going to talk about the wave tops. Okay. This is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. This is just hitting the wave tops and understanding how important it is to have businesses as it pertains to building a dynasty. Okay? All right, so the importance of having a business or having your own businesses. Number one, autonomy. Autonomy. You must become the king of your own castle to unlock your potential. Working for someone else should be temporary. Working for someone else should be temporary. Unless, okay, there's a caveat, unless you really enjoy what you do and it's by choice, not out of necessity. We got that. So, if you have a job or a career and you really love, let's say you're an actor, okay? You're an actor, but you don't own any production studio. You don't own any part of the business, but you're an actor and you love what you do. You love what you do. You love how much money you make. You're surrounded by great people. You like the work schedule. Then that's fine, okay? Next point. No wealth ceiling, okay? The importance of having your own business is there's no wealth ceiling, okay? No more waiting for a promotion or kissing the boss's ass for a pay raise. Let your ambition fuel your success to limitless heights. Increase your income by providing value to society. So most of you that are watching this video, we've all, or most of us, we've had a job where you get paid so much. Maybe it's a salary, maybe it's on commission, but being at the lower end of the totem pole, not owning the business, but being a part of the business, well, a lot of times what ends up happening, there's a cap on how much money you make. Now, you may have a good job, you may make a lot of money, but owning the business is what gives you that that prevents that wealth ceiling, because then you determine how much you pay yourself. You understand, and your employees and the infrastructure and all that stuff. So no wealth ceiling is one of the biggest parts, is one of the biggest benefits to owning businesses. You understand? And we're going to get into, I know, again, we're just hitting the wave tops. We're going to get into a lot more detail later on down the road. Got it? Next thing, the importance of having your own businesses. Having your own so this is big. This is very important. All right, do not overlook this. Having your own businesses, it builds confidence. Builds confidence. This is important. Nothing beats the pride of having several organizations to call your own. Now, confidence is going to come up a lot when we talk about dating, we talk about attraction, when we talk about your relationship with a potential partner. Confidence is very important, not just in business, but it's also important in your relationships. You understand? And so I want you to hold on to that. All right, confidence. Keep that word in your head, because it's going to come up again. Okay. Next thing, owning your own businesses. Well, it teaches you how to take calculated risk. Calculated risk is going to be a very important concept in Underdogs United. Taking calculated risk. From the time we're a child growing up into adulthood, we are taught, especially as men and women, honestly, we are taught to be so risk adverse And, on the surface, that's not a bad thing, right? To not want to take large risks, right? We're so used to having these safety nets. We're so used to doing the safest option. And what ends up happening is you don't unlock the potential that you have when you only accept to do the safest thing. Now, I know that sounds very controversial. Brother Scott, what do you mean take risk? Take risks? Oh, that's scary. Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I have to say about that is there's a reason why we have the core values of faith, courage, and discipline. You understand? When it comes to a point in your life where you have to take calculated risk, you got to understand there's an old saying, fortune favors the bold. Anybody in history that has done anything worth a damn has had to take calculated risk. Whether it was the great conquerors, whether it was the great philosophers, whether it was inventors, innovators. You look at the Wright brothers, right? Who pioneered. They didn't create or invent, aviation, human aviation, but they were early pioneers, and they contributed a significant amount to our ability to get in a damn plane and fly across the world. They had to take risk. They had to take financial risk, and most importantly, they had to take risk, bodily risk. You understand? I'm messing up the set. But yeah, and then of course I always bring up the great conquerors because it's such a easy to understand example. If you're Napoleon, if you're Alexander the Great, if you're Julius Caesar, if you're Genghis, let's go to the east side. If you're Genghis Khan, you understand? Attila the Hun. All these, when they went into battle, when they went into military campaigns, it was not guaranteed that they were just going to win every battle. And then oftentimes they didn't win every battle, except for Alexander the Great. He was undefeated. But everybody else, it was not a guarantee. Your soldiers' lives were on the line. Your state, your city state, or your nation state, or whatever, it was on the line. You understand? And they had to take calculated risk. So to tie all that into this, having your own businesses will teach you or put you in positions where you have to take calculated risk. And that is important in life. All right? And before I move on, let me say this. So, I always refer to back in the days of old, before civilization, all right? Before we had these societies where you were able to store wheat and grain, and you had cattle and sheep readily available, and you had a territory that you defended. Before all of that, every day, our ancestors, no matter what your ethnicity is, our ancestors had to take calculated risk. Because if you didn't survive. Every day, you had to get up. You had to find something to eat. Whether it's hunting or foraging, you understand? And if you were not successful, that's one less day of food in your belly and your family's belly. You understand? So you had to get out there in the wild, get out there in the desert, get out there in the jungle, right? For the survival of you and your community. And we don't have, or most of us don't have even the opportunities to take calculated risk, all right? So that's important when it comes to having your own businesses, all right? And then the last thing I'll say about that is every business started off as an idea. It's not easy to build and run a successful business, but it's worth the effort. Now, again, I'm hitting the wave tops when it comes to business ownership and management. As you know, there's degrees. People go to college to get degrees in business administration. People have master's degrees, and that's fine and that's dandy. You understand, especially when you get to the point where you have these multi-million dollar, billion-dollar corporations, and it requires a specific understanding of accounting and finance and things of that nature. But this is just to get the idea out there, get this in the ether, so you can, because people don't think, people go to their jobs, people go to their place of work, and the idea never pops up that, someone had to build this infrastructure. Someone had to build this, start this company. Maybe I could do something similar. I have the skill set. I understand the ins and outs. You see what I'm saying? That most people, that's not even a thought that enters their mind. So again, I'm just putting it out there in the ether, so you can take it, you can chew on it, and maybe do something with it. All right? All right, so I talked about the importance of having your own businesses. We're going to briefly talk about how developing a plan to start your first business, okay? All right. Now this is good. I'm going to refer back to your calling. Remember, pursuing your calling and building your dynasty is your purpose in life. And what is a calling again? A calling is a lifelong mission that you're passionate about that provides value to others. All right, here we go. Now, develop a plan to start your first business. Number one, determine if your calling can be monetized. All right? Now, if you remember in my first previous videos, I told you that your calling necessarily doesn't have to be your occupation. All right? And I'm going to keep saying it. Calling is a lifelong mission that you're passionate about that provides value to others. You understand? Your calling and your occupation can be separate, but it is ideal. It's ideal for them to be one and the same, right? If you love taking pictures and you're able to have to create a photography career, then that is ideal. If you love to play video games and stream and you're able to create a career in streaming, that is ideal. And so when I say determine if your calling can be monetized, if you have a situation like I just previously gave examples for, boom, okay? And then like I said, let's go back up. Expanding your estate, having financial freedom, and creating generational wealth should be your primary objectives when building your dynasty. So if you're able to create a situation where you can do that with your calling, fantastic. All right? All right. So, determine if your calling can be monetized. Point two, if your calling can't be monetized and you have a passion for something else, determine if that can be monetized. All right? So, let's use those same examples. Okay? So, let's say your calling is to be a great streamer, and you have a couple thousand subscribers. They love when you post. They love when you get online. There's a lot of back and forth banter, but maybe it's not enough to where that's paying the bills, or you have financial freedom. That's fine. That can still be your calling. But let's say you have another calling, or you have another passion to do photography, right? Your calling is to stream, but you also have a gift to take pictures and edit pictures, and it's something that you've been doing for a while, and you're not as passionate as you are in streaming, but you're pretty passionate about it. There you go. If your calling can't be monetized and you have a passion for something else, determine if that can be monetized. And if you can monetize the photography, but you can't really, get over that hump with the streaming, boom, that's okay. You understand? And so, your calling couldn't be monetized, but you found something else that you were passionate about that could be, that's fine, that's perfect. You understand? Now, next point. If your passions can't be monetized, determine if you have a current skill set that can be monetized. All right, so we'll keep the same example, okay? But we'll change some of the variables. All right, so let's say you love streaming, you love photography, but those don't pay the bills, right? You don't have any financial freedom, and you have to make a living. You understand? So as it pertains to starting a business, you have your passions. Your passions are great, and people are benefiting from them. Well, you still need to bring some bread in so you can pay the bills. If you have a skill set, if you already currently have a skill set, or you have something that comes natural to you, you can build a business around that. You understand? So again, let's use the same examples. All right? Photography, streaming, not paying the bills, not something you can build a business from just yet. But let's say you spent the past 5 years as a barber. All right? Let's say you learn how to cut hair in the military. Let's say you did a 4-year tour. You learn how to cut hair just from being deployed and being the guy that cuts everyone's hair because there's no barber shop in sight. And then you get back, you spend an additional year actually working at a barber shop. And you hone this skill set. Now, this is not something you would call your calling because maybe you're just not that passionate about cutting people's hair. You know, you're good at it. It's something that you picked up along the way, and it's something you've been doing for a long time. And it's something that you don't mind doing it. Like when you're at the barber shop and you're cutting people's hair, you like the ambiance, the atmosphere. You make a lot of friends coming in. You guys are watching sports. You guys are talking about the latest updates on who has a winning season and losing season. So that's something you can build a business around, even though you're not super passionate about it. You understand? So you can cut hair, and then while at the same time you have your calling of photography and streaming. You understand? So that's that. Next point, all right? Next point. Now, if you don't have a current skill set that can be monetized, research a skill set that you are interested in for the purpose of monetizing it. Let me read that again. Y'all know I can't read. All right. If you don't have a current skill set that can be monetized, research a skill set that you would be interested in learning for the purpose of monetizing it. All right, now it sounds confusing. Let me explain that, okay? So if there's something that is an ideal business, right? And maybe you don't know much about it just yet, okay? Let's say you have a job, and let's say you already have your calling, right? So you have your job, you work, let's say you're a cashier somewhere. You're a cashier, you're making decent money, and after hours, you're doing your streaming, okay? I just use streaming as an example because that's a popular thing to do nowadays, all right? So you work as a cashier, you're doing your streaming after work, but you watch Underdogs United, you watch Brother Scott, and you want to start your own business, okay? One thing you could do is you could just, after work, instead of streaming that night, let's look up different business ideas. Let's look up something that's interesting. Maybe I'm not super passionate about it, but it's something that I wouldn't mind building a business around. You understand? So let's say, for example, your mom owns a restaurant, and you worked in the restaurant as a kid coming up, and you never really thought about it, but when you watched Underdogs United, you decided, I know a little bit about the restaurant industry. My family's in it. Maybe I could start my own. You understand? And so from there, you do your research, you understand how the business works, you understand the industry, so on and so forth. And then You execute. Or you start putting the plans in place to execute. You understand? So that's that. And then the last thing I'm going to say about developing your first business, well, actually, no, I have a little bit more. All right. So next thing you want to do is research your industry. So I kind of just hit on that. Research your industry. All right. So remember, before we get into that, you need to determine if your calling can be monetized. If your calling can't be monetized and you have a passion for something else, determine if that can be monetized. If your passions can't be monetized, if none of your passions can't be monetized, determine if you already have a current skill set that can be monetized. And then if you don't have a current skill set that can be monetized, research a skill set that you would be interested in learning for the purpose of monetizing it. All right, we understand. Now, you have to research your industry. Is it a growing industry? Is it a dying industry? What are the barriers to entry? What are the startup and overhead costs? How competitive is the industry? These are a bunch of different questions you need to ask yourself as you start thinking about developing a plan to start your own business. Again, there's tons and tons of books. Millions of people go to school for this. So there's a bunch of information out there, right? You can go talk to a professional who specializes in startups and starting your LLCs, things of that nature. So again, a lot of this is you're gonna have to incorporate some research when it comes to developing a plan to start your first business. You understand? All right. Again, when you're looking at the news and you hear about these corporations and these mergers and acquisitions and stuff, a lot of times it can be a bit overwhelming, but it's really not that difficult to start a business. You understand? And this is why you have to do your own independent research. All right. Now, another thing about this, you have to determine how you will finance your business. And there's different ways to do it. So you have personal funding, you have debt funding, you have equity funding, bootstrapping, crowdfunding, venture capital, angel investors. There's so many different ways, right, to fund your business. And again, it is on you to determine what makes sense for you, what makes sense for your industry, what are the norms and practices of what you're about to get into. You understand? But I listed off some of the ways you can finance that business. Okay. Next. All right, this is important. Plan to build your business while you still have your current occupation. Okay? So let's go back to what I was saying before, okay? Let's say you're a cashier, right? You make okay money or whatever. And you want to go, you listen to Brother Scott, you want to start your own business. Well, you should be in the mindset that you're going to build this business while still maintaining this occupation that you currently have. All right? The business is growing. The business is doing well, but I'm going to maintain this. I'm going to maintain the occupation that I currently have until my business is where I can transition from cashier to whatever, photographer, cashier to owner of a restaurant, cashier to whatever it is, whatever your endeavor is. You understand? You should have the mindset that while you're still working here, you're going to be building up this, and then when it makes financial sense, you can jump from this and transition to this. We understand. Okay? And then the last thing is to, again, be realistic with your expectations. All right? Again, all this comes down to you researching your industry, you doing your homework, and you understanding how that industry grows, how competitive it is, and 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 taking that knowledge and being realistic with what you should expect. Right? Now, this last part, determining when to go all in on your business. One, you should have a consistent business. So again, let's go back to the restaurant. So if you're a cashier, right, and let's say, let's use the photography example, all right? And the reason I'm saying cashier is just because cashier is a common job, right? All right? All right, so let's say you're a cashier, but you have time to, you're a photographer as well on your off time, and you have time to do various photo shoots. Maybe you primarily do it on the weekends, or you do it on weeknights and weekends, you understand? And it's getting to a point where your photography business is starting to gain traction, it's starting to go off, all right? And you're getting to a point where you have so much business, with the photography that it's about to start impeding, taking away from your regular day job. And the business is so consistent where you may have to make a decision, okay? Maybe it's about time I go all in on this photography. My name's out there, I got a good reputation, business is coming in, I'm making just as much as I am with my day job here. Maybe I should go all in. You understand? All right, so, which goes into my next point. You should be making a living wage from your business, or have 6 months to a year worth of savings to cover your living expenses. All right, so let's say, again, photography. Let's say you want to go all in. If you're making a living wage, if you're making just as much money as you are doing your day job, maybe it's time. Let's go full. Let's build this up, because remember, there's no cap, right? When you have your own business, right? There's no limitation or wealth ceiling, like I said before, on how much money you can make. Whatever comes in, that's all you. And then it's on you to determine, what to put back into the business, what's going to be your salary, whether you need to hire employees, so on and so forth, or get contractors. You understand? But if you're working for somebody else, you can ask for a raise. You can maybe, ask. You understand? Whereas here, you make decisions. You decide. We understand. And so, if you're making a living wage already, or let's say you want to go all in, on the photography, and you've gotten to a point where you saved up a decent amount of living expenses, half a year, something along those lines. Boom, there you go. Now I can do my photography full time, and I got at least 6 months where I'm good. I don't need to go worry about somebody else telling me what to do, somebody else telling me, hey, why you late, X, Y, and Z. Boom, I'm just going full time for 6 months to a year on this business idea. You understand? So, and then the last thing is very important. You got to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself and prove the naysayers wrong. There's a reason why we have our core values of faith, courage, and discipline. And if you're going to go and start or build your own business, you're going to need faith, you're going to need courage, and you're going to need discipline. You understand? Because you're going to have naysayers out there. You're going to have obstacles. Just go back to go to the video where I talk about your core values. I don't want to re-explain what they mean, but go back to that video where I talk about faith, I talk about courage, I talk about discipline, and this is going to be a point where you're going to have to apply those core values. You're going to have to embrace and embody those core values of faith, courage, and discipline if you want to start. If you want to start your own business, okay. So yeah, that was a mouthful. All right. So today we talked about creating a plan to build a dynasty. Okay. We talked about what is a dynasty. We talked about the importance of having your own businesses. We talked about developing a plan to start your first business. And then we also talked about determining when to go all in on your business. All right? All right. So, if you haven't already, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and donate. And always remember, with faith, courage, and discipline, we will prevail.